to episode 280 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio on the beautiful campus of Grace College and Grace Theological Seminary by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is transitioning to summer mode, John Scott Sloat.
Doc, what's happening?
Is there such a thing as summer mode for your job?
Not really. No. There's parking's a lot easier in the summer.
Yes, that's for sure.
The cafeteria is not open in the summer. That makes things harder for me.
That's true.
But there's no summer mode. There's no sabbatical for this role.
Right. I mean, is there...
I get a vacation.
Right.
I go on vacation next week. Very excited about that.
Yeah. I mean, campus is a lot quieter, and faculty aren't around.
Yeah, and sometimes that's nice. Sometimes that's not as nice.
Yes, indeed.
You know, I generally enjoy connecting with people.
Yeah, generally, yeah, that's good given your job.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah.
I told somebody I'm an introvert this last weekend. They're like, "How on earth do you do your job?" I went, strategically.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I as I get older, I get more and more introverted, and so I wonder if that'll happen to you, John.
I don't know.
I think that can happen with introverts, but we shall see. We shall see. If you would like to contact the show and ask John about his summer vacation plans, you can contact the show on X at VNSPod. Email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube, and we would love for you to leave a 5-star rating. All right, John.
Yep.
You ready to talk some sports?
I guess.
So NBA playoffs kind of leading the way here.
It's been a fun playoff season.
It's been a competitive. If you're a person who is just banking on the chalk, then you've had some issues.
Yeah.
So let's start with your beloved Knickerbockers.
They're up 3-1.
They are up 3-1 on the defending NBA champs.
Well, and it's not just that they're up 3-1. Like if they had played very close games and had battled, but in all three of their wins, the first two wins they won in Boston, they were down 20 and 22 points, I believe, in each of those games, and then came back to win. That's wild to me.
Yeah.
And in the first game, the Celtics just did not shoot the ball well.
Right.
In the second game, they didn't shoot the ball particularly well either, although I think the Knicks were frustrating them with the defense. Game 3 in the Garden, Boston played much better.
Yeah.
And shot the ball very well. And then they were down 14 last night and came back to win.
Yep. Yeah.
So Brunson is a superstar, and I think the Knicks are created in a lab to beat the Boston Celtics. I think that's...
Well, what's interesting to me...
Have you watched?
I have.
The Knicks Celtics games. Okay.
Yeah, I know last night's game ended past your bedtime.
Yeah, I fell asleep, and it was on. Was it on TNT?
No, it was an ESPN game.
It was an ESPN game. I don't have cable, so I wasn't able to.
The arguably potentially even bigger of a story than the Celtics losing was Jason Tatum getting injured at the end of that game. And
he was on fire too.
Yeah, he had like over 40. And I haven't looked this morning.
No, I haven't looked either.
To see if there's an update. But in my very untrained non-medical doctor opinion, and confirmed by lots of speculation on Twitter, the leading theory seems to be an Achilles.
Ooh.
Because it was a non-contact injury, and just kind of the way he went down. people are suggesting Achilles. So I haven't seen anything this morning. I didn't look to find out if there's an update, which, by the way, we're actually recording on the day the podcast releases. So
Yeah, isn't that weird? We're
it's
recording
unusual.
on a Tuesday.
Yes, because of your busy schedule. We're in the studio bright and early in the morning.
8 a.m.
Yeah. So, and so now the Celtics are down 3-1. They go home for Game 5, and almost certainly without Jason Tatum.
Yeah.
And also an ailing Porzingis.
It's got a weird.
Some sort of weird long-term virus he's had for like over a month, like 2 months. Like they can't figure out what it is.
Yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's right there for your Knickerbockers.
It feels like it's there for the taking.
Yeah.
I regret picking against them last week.
Yes.
Very much regret.
You have little faith.
Yeah.
You have little faith. The other series in the East, another surprising result so far is the Pacers lead the Cavs by a 3-1.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yes.
And the Cavs are healthy?
Well, for Game 2, they didn't have Mobley and Garland and maybe one more guy. But they're the better team. It's just a weird dynamic. They gave away Game 2. So even though they didn't have those key contributors, they were up 7 with like 45 seconds left.
I watched the end of that game.
And
yeah.
just they turned the ball over a couple of times. Now, look, I'm sympathetic. I want the Cavs to win. Okay, so I'm not, and Cavs fans will point to the refs missed an obvious free throw violation that gave the Pacers the offensive rebound that led to the winning 3-point shot. Okay, that's a fair criticism. But you can't give away a 7-point lead the way they did by turning the ball over multiple times, and it was just bad. And so, Game 5, I imagine that's tonight.
That sounds right. Yeah.
So that's in Cleveland. You'd have to think the Cavs are going to win that game probably.
If they want the series to continue, they will certainly win that game.
And then force a Game 6 in Indianapolis. So we'll see.
If the Eastern Conference Finals is Pacers Knicks,
yeah, I know it'll evoke the echoes.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, did you know that our own pastor was at Game 3 of this series? Of the Pacers Cavs game.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
How do you come across tickets for that?
I forget the connection, but and I think they were like 4 rows from on the floor on the floor basically.
Whoa.
Yeah.
No wonder he hasn't been preaching.
Wow.
It's been too busy.
Oh gosh, I have so many comments that I cannot say on the air right now. Oh, I have so many things I want to say.
Well, we'll know we'll get a text this afternoon from him.
Oh yeah, he'll explain how he got the tickets, and yeah. And it was planned, just to be clear. It's not related. He's been out of the pulpit the last few weeks to give one of our other pastors who's going to do a church plant this fall, give him a chance to do 3 consecutive sermons.
Yeah.
Which Adam's doing a great job.
Some reps. Yep.
Yeah. Some reps. There you go. Getting shots up. Before the big game. Yeah. All right. So, and then in the West, Timberwolves lead the Warriors 3-1. Steph Curry has been out for a couple of those games. And then the most competitive series, I should say, is just Nuggets and Thunder. That's just a war.
Just a good series.
Yep. So we shall see how that all shakes out. But I can tell you that the out of the West, I'm not sure who the league office would be rooting for. Like, none of those are major markets. Maybe the Warriors.
Warriors, San Francisco's a big market.
But-
Oakland, San Francisco.
Yeah.
That'd probably be Minnesota's a decent-sized market, although I'm not sure it brings in a ton of viewers
I don't
nationally.
know. I mean, they've got Anthony Edwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
He's fun to watch.
Yeah.
I don't know if he really moves the dial, though, nationally. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know if Minnesota as a city moves the dial nationally.
Probably not.
San Francisco certainly does. Oklahoma City does not. Denver maybe more so?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, out of the East, the league office clearly wants either Knicks or Celtics. One of those two.
Absolutely.
For ratings. So,
Absolutely.
yes. Have you paid any attention to the NHL playoffs?
No, it's something I've given up. I enjoy the NHL playoffs. I enjoy watching hockey.
I enjoy watching playoff hockey.
Mm-hmm.
The intensity, just I've not watched any yet. What are they at the conference?
I have no idea.
Finals probably now,
Yeah,
or semifinals. Like they typically are pretty close in pacing to what the NBA is in terms of where they're at.
Very similar. When I was living in Pittsburgh, when I was at high school and when I would come home in the summers for college, it was a ton of fun to watch the Pittsburgh Penguins play. They were very, very good. They were a young team. The city was very excited about them. Mm-hmm. And we would, as a family, gather to watch those games. And it was just a blast.
Okay. Yeah. Let's talk some baseball.
Yeah.
What's going on with the Metropolitans?
You know, the Mets walked off the Pittsburgh Pirates last night. We faced Paul Skeens.
Ah, yes.
The phenom who's very, very good. So we won that game last night.
Also known for dating Livy Dunn.
Yes. Welcome to E, you know. But, so the Mets took 2 or 3 from the Cubs before that. We're hitting a stretch where we have Cubs, Yankees, Dodgers. So it's a good, good barometer of how good your team is.
Jordan will be appalled at this question, but are the Cubs any good this year?
Cubs are very good.
Okay.
Very, very, very good. Yeah, they're number one in their conference. They played the Mets tough.
You mean division?
Division, yeah. Sorry. Number 1 in their division. The NL Central, they're top. They've played the toughest schedule in baseball and have one of the better records.
All right.
They're very, very good. Their bullpen, I think, is lacking. I think Jordan in Warsaw would agree with that statement.
Probably.
Their bullpen is lacking. He texted me that over the weekend.
Okay.
After Francisco Lindor hit a home run in the 8th in a tie ball game.
Yes, I saw Jordan last night at a T-ball game.
Oh, nice.
Went to some T-ball last night.
Nice.
Yes.
Was it Jordan's children that brought you to T-ball, or was it
them and the Gabe and his family were there? So their oldest boy, Jack.
Oh, nice.
Playing T-ball
out at Pleasant View Bible.
That's right.
Nice, the view.
Yes. So that's a great little program they got there.
Yeah,
man.
they got a nice little ministry.
Yeah.
Mencarelli out there still?
I didn't see him.
Okay.
I didn't see. Well, actually, I think it's been going on for. Someone told me 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've been doing that T-ball thing for 30 years.
That's great.
That's amazing. So, trying to think. Anything else in the world of sports, John?
Ooh, any big sports stories of late?
The PGA Championship, right? It's coming up, I think, on the golf side of things.
That sounds right.
But we're approaching that summer lull where
baseball carries the load.
where we're going to have to start talking more about cricket. I'm going to have to get back onto YouTube and pick up some cricket to fill the gap. I'll have to. That's something I haven't checked. I'll be in England this summer. I'll have to check if there's a cricket match.
Oh yeah. The Mavericks got the number 1 pick in the NBA
right.
draft.
Yes.
Sorry, I just pulled up The Athletic to see what I could find.
Yeah. Which, of course, is feeding plenty of, conspiracy theories of, teams trade away their major superstar, and then lo and behold, that year they end up with the number 1 pick.
Derek Carr retired.
Yes.
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think we've covered our bases.
Yankees player taken off the field via ambulance.
Did he run into somebody?
I don't know. I'm just reading headlines off The Athletic now.
This is what our sports segment's been reduced to. You're reading headlines off of The Athletic website.
Let's see.
I think if we're to that point, I think that's a signal that it's time to move on. So
Okay, let's do it.
all right. We are beginning our discussion today of our summer read.
Yeah.
You've been looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to it as well. But I mean, you being the Timmy K fanboy.
I like Timmy K. I'm excited for this author introduction too. Matt seems like a good guy.
I don't know that I've ever met him. I don't think I've ever met him. Now I think about it. We've exchanged some emails and interacted on some other things like that. But
I remember when he had an article about your Philippians commentary years ago.
At the time he was like one of the editors at Gospel Coalition, and so he was the one primarily responsible for choosing it as the book of the year for theology and Bible in 2015.
That sounds right. Yeah.
Ish, somewhere in there. So, in any case, so we are working our way through Tim Keller on the Christian Life, The Transforming Power of the Gospel by Matt Smethurst.
It just came out.
Yes.
Just a few short weeks ago.
And we want to thank our friends at Crossway for
Yes.
sending us free copies.
Crossway is a great publisher.
We appreciate them greatly.
You're a Crossway author?
I am. Yes. Special shout out to Lauren for her help in securing us some free copies. So appreciate that. So this week we are going to discuss the introduction, which is very short. I mean, we're talking 7-8 pages maybe. Yeah, 8 pages. And then the first 2 chapters. So we won't spend much time on the introduction. Basically, it gives just a very brief kind of biographical overview of Keller's life. Anything that jumped out to you from that? I mean, I assumed you're probably pretty familiar with what was in there in terms of his background.
Yeah, I knew what he was at Westminster for a time, but I think I had forgotten he was at Westminster for a time.
Yeah.
I didn't realize he was as popular as he was at Westminster. I knew R.C. Sproul did his wedding.
Yep.
So, yeah, I don't feel like I learned a ton, but always it was the proper length of a biography for this
right.
kind of book.
That's right.
Sometimes you get these kind of books and the biography is like a quarter
Right.
of the book. So I appreciated
5
to 7 pages.
And credit to Matt. He's very disciplined in the kind of book he's writing here. Like Colin Hansen wrote essentially Keller's intellectual biography.
Yep.
So there's plenty of it's not strictly speaking a pure biography what Colin Hansen did, but it is it's as close as there is out there in terms of giving you a sketch of his life. But with emphasis on, obviously, his intellectual influences and that kind of thing. But I think for people who are only familiar with Keller as a New York City pastor, I think it will be surprising to them to find out that he spent his first 10 years of ministry in a small church in Virginia.
With blue-collar people.
That's right. And so I think, Smethurst points out that that decade there, I think, helped him learn how to take complex ideas and communicate them in simple ways so that people could understand them and apply them. And that served him well. I mean, that serves any communicator well, regardless of where you end up. But it also, I think, highlights the fact that when you're a small town pastor like that, you do everything. And so it'd be easy to maybe look at Keller and be like, oh well, he's this big city pastor and he's got a huge team of people, and so does he ever really do any sort of like pastoral counseling? Does he do hospital visits and that sort of stuff? And it's like, well, he cut his teeth for the first 10 years of his ministry doing all of that, in a smaller context. I think the only thing – there was a quote in here that he – I was going to see if I could flag that here. That Keller basically mentioned that Smethurst quotes here that – see if I can find it. Basically, it was along the lines of in a small church, your pastoral care sets up your preaching. And then in the big city, it's your preaching that sets up your pastoral care.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty interesting insight.
And so, I think that's a fascinating difference in dynamic, and I can see how that can be the case.
Well, and I think that those 10 years in Virginia are instructive, particularly to young guys in seminary who look at sort of, the Kellers or the Pipers or sort of these big names who are thought leaders and want to be the thought leader.
Yep.
But don't see the 10, 20 years of counseling sessions, preaching, hospital visits that lead them to the spot where they can be thought leaders.
Right. And I would say a couple things related to that. The first is neither of those men wrote a book, I think, before they were 50 or maybe 45.
You're talking Piper, Keller?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. I think that's probably right.
That they had 10 to 15 to 20 years of lived out pastoral ministry under their belt before they ever wrote a book. Now, they didn't grow up, they weren't serving in a context where there was social media or even, blogs or that sort of thing. And so you either wrote books or maybe like you could try to get an article published in like Christianity Today or something.
Or Ligonier. Ligonier was doing a magazine back then.
Yeah. So I think the other thing I'll point out with that is that neither of them sought a platform.
In fact, they were probably the opposite.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Keller famously did not want to publish a book.
Well, and even Piper, I mean, I think they both wrote because they thought, I think this will be helpful to the body of Christ. Not, I want to be an author, or I want to be a big stage speaker at a major conference, or that kind of thing. Like that's just not their motivation. So, in any case, let's talk about. So we're going to talk about the first two chapters. Chapter 1. It's entitled One Hero, Jesus Christ in All Scripture. Initial thoughts on this chapter here.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I can't help but think about this and then think about my own intellectual development and think of this chapter. This is a big hammering point for Keller. I remember logging on to do you remember iTunes University? That used to be a thing.
No,
I don't know if I don't believe it's still a thing, but
probably not.
Early App Store
I'm not
days.
sure iTunes is a thing anymore. Is it?
I guess probably not. It's probably just Apple Music now.
Yeah.
But early iPhone App Store days, there was an iTunes University, and you could go on there and you could get basically college courses for free, the lectures and you could go listen to them.
Yep.
One of them was out of Westminster, and it was I believe it was Clowney and Keller teaching on Jesus and all of Scripture.
Yeah.
And it was – and maybe I have that wrong. When did Clowney die?
I don't know. I mean, he's been gone quite a while.
Right. Well, the reason I say that is one thing that sticks out is because I remember listening to it and Keller's talking about like, the two of them are talking and it's just like, hey, listen, I use Lord of the Rings illustrations all the time in my preaching, and they're coming out with a movie that's going to help these illustrations. So it'd be worth getting into some J.R.R. Tolkien for your illustration.
2005 is when Ed Clowney
Okay,
died.
so that would line up. Mm-hmm. So, but I remember the two of them walking through this and so this was foundational for me. And then I think Keller's focus on this led to the Gospel Coalition in 2011 that was preaching the Old Testament, and that was a pretty formative conference for me as well. So this chapter has had the concepts in this chapter have had a big impact on me. So that's just sort of one overarching note from this chapter.
Yeah. I do think that when I think of Keller, actually, this chapter and chapter 2, these are the two things I think about most immediately in terms of what he is known for.
Yeah.
But I do think, and I appreciate what Smethurst does here in terms of he gives you a little glimpse into method, as well as even Keller giving some of the cautions of how not to do this in terms of just the warnings. And this is, people I think can be critical of this approach because of the way some people practice it. Mm-hmm. Because it can feel like, when done poorly, it can feel like the Old Testament text is just a springboard.
Sure.
To what I really want to talk about is Jesus. Even though this passage is about Mephibosheth and and David, I want to talk about Jesus. And so, you just go to cursory manner. Touch on the Old Testament text, but it becomes just this springboard to get you to the New Testament. And so I appreciate that he addresses that in this chapter, that it can be done poorly. Again, I think part of what I appreciate about this chapter is at the end here. So this is on page 24. He says, in the final analysis, says Keller, there are two ways to read the Bible, as if it's all about you or all about him. Mm-hmm. And the seminary prof in me wants to nuance that. And I think Keller would say, I think he would have agreed. Like, he's stating a sharp either or to get your attention. I think you can read it as primarily about God and secondarily about us.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's only an either or here. But his point is on target in terms of the focus. And then he quotes Keller, "You should indeed obey the things the Bible says, but if you read it as all about you and something you have to do to live up to God, that will just crush you into compliance. But if you read it as salvation by grace through Jesus Christ, it'll melt your heart into wanting to obey those things." So I think that's a good distinction there.
Absolutely.
But I still remember you mentioned the Gospel Coalition conference in 2011. Keller preached on Exodus 14 and 15, basically the parting of the Red Sea. Mm-hmm. It was fantastic, absolutely fantastic.
I also remember that conference that Don Carson, his sermon was entitled "Getting Excited About Melchizedek."
Yes. Only Don Carson can do that. Only Don Carson can write a sermon title like that at a major conference like that and be like, yeah, this is good. Like, how long did it take you to come up with that one, Don? Anyway.
But yes, I do remember Keller's Exodus sermon, and I even remember his point about that there were Israelites that were going through the Red Sea that were like, and he uses some imagination here, right, that were super excited, thrilled about, my goodness, look what the Lord is doing. We're going to be take that Egyptians, sort of laying it on them. And then he goes, there were probably Israelites who were like, oh my goodness, we're going to die, but I have no other options but to walk through this Red Sea.
Right.
And he made the point that it had nothing to do with the quality of their faith, but who their faith was in. And I remember that. I just remember that being a very clear point
to
me.
Yeah, absolutely. We should move on to chapter 2.
Oh, okay.
Excavating Sin, a Tale of Disordered Loves. Basically, this is his whole sin as idolatry approach. So, opening thoughts on this.
It was interesting. So he kind of started with the idea that like his own presuppositions when he was putting this chapter together were Keller sort of had this sort of one understanding of sin that he really hammered, and he goes, "This feels cheapened. This feels like we're not talking about the full array of sin here." And he goes, but as he dug into it more and more and more, he realized, oh, this is very, very deep and very, very sort of all-encompassing. Have you felt that way about Keller's understanding of sin as idolatry?
Yes.
Okay. Do you feel as Matt does here, or?
I don't know that I came out where Smethurst does at the end here. I'm still not sure that that sin as idolatry is the overarching framework through which we understand every aspect of sin.
How much of that is, my goodness, this worked really well in this cultural moment? And how much of that is Keller latched onto this and just ran with it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think he Matt does a good job of highlighting some of the influences on Keller here. Obviously, even David Powlison's work in this area. I think here's the tension I feel. I think in the hands of someone as skilled and knowledgeable as Tim Keller, he can make that work. I worry that others, though, that they look at that and go, okay, sin is idolatry, and everything is sort of in that category. But they lack the requisite depth and breadth of knowledge of both Scripture and other ways that Scripture talks about sin and how that actually, at least in Keller's mind, is linked back to sin as idolatry. And so to me, I think that's probably part of the tension I feel is I think Keller can pull this off because he was knowledgeable enough, gifted enough, and had thought deeply enough about this. Whereas others, I worry that they don't have that depth. And so it can feel simplistic. But if you've got Keller's foundation and breadth of knowledge, it works.
Yeah.
Does that make sense in terms of
Yeah. No, it does. Would you mind, just for the listeners out there who are like, all right, well, what other ways are there to look at sin? Would you mind just talking through one or two of those?
Sure. I mean, I think that you get the element of pride, for example, which Keller would immediately say, well, sure. Pride is just asserting or putting yourself in the place that God deserves, so that at the underneath that is in fact idolatry. So, or even just an inward self-focus that sin inverts and twists things so that you start with yourself and move outward, rather than how God reorients us in terms of we are to start with God and then move inward in terms of our understanding of the world, of how we act, how we think, etc. So I think, again, in the skilled hands of someone like Keller, I think, yeah. And if someone were able to read, Counterfeit Gods and really soak it in and think through it, I think so. I think that can work. I just worry at the sort of simplistic surface level application that some people might use this. And, well, you're jealous. Well, that's an idolatry problem. You just need to worship more. Mm-hmm. Well, even in this chapter, Keller, he quotes Keller's basically saying, well, at the root, there's a worship problem in every sin, that your worship is directed towards the wrong thing. Mm-hmm. Okay, I can agree with that at some level for sure, but if you don't have the richness and the foundation behind what Keller's saying, I can see people being like, so wait a minute. So I'm jealous. You're saying I need to sing more worship songs? Mm-hmm.
It feels simplistic and a little almost moralistic at some level.
Well, or even, it's just a different version of, just read your Bible more. And of course read your Bible more. But that's not what Keller – that's not how Keller would do pastoral counseling or practice, right? He would help people understand how what they're doing is an expression of idolatry and how they need to reorient their loves. He's clearly dependent on Augustine and also Edwards in the way that he talks about those things.
Yeah, did Edwards come up in this chapter?
I don't remember that, but I
Edwards needs to come up in this book at some point. I don't know when and where.
Well, I haven't looked. I have not.
We've definitely hit Augustine. We've definitely hit Martin Lloyd-Jones. There's an R.C. Sproul mention earlier. It does feel like we're missing a Jonathan Edwards moment.
I mean, it's still early.
Yeah.
It looks like he's mentioned on page 121, which is in the chapter on
prayer.
Interesting. I mean, now in fairness to Matt, he's not doing an intellectual biography like Colin Hansen did. Mm-hmm. And Colin Hansen does get into how Edwards influenced Keller. So if you're looking for that, the Colin Hansen book is a good choice.
And we didn't hear from Lewis in this chapter either, did we? I've read into chapter 3 at this point, and we do hear from Lewis at some point. I can't remember if it was this chapter or the next.
Yeah, I don't remember. But again, keep in mind what Smethurst is trying to do here. He's trying to summarize for you, here's Keller's approach to the Christian life.
Yeah.
And only occasionally dropping in he's really borrowing this or adapting this from Augustine or Lewis or Edwards and that sort of thing, which is fine. I think he's in one sense benefiting from Colin Hansen wrote the book on intellectual influence, so I don't have to do that work. I can just sort of pick and choose and drop that in.
So are you familiar with the Tim Keller podcast, Gospel in Life?
I don't think I am.
Okay, so Gospel in Life puts out a Tim Keller sermon every single day, and you can go listen to it. They are working through this book right now, and the major –
Through this book?
through the chapters, basically, and saying, "Oh, here's the sermon on this topic. Here's the sermon."
Interesting.
And as you're listening to the sermon, I listened to a number of the sermons and like, "Oh yeah, I recognize that quote.
Yeah.
Oh, he said that there."
Yeah.
So it's kind of been fun to listen along.
Yeah. Can you put a link in the show notes to that?
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
think people might be interested in that.
Yeah.
Because I remember one of the things I enjoyed about the Colin Hansen book on Tim Keller is I listened to the audiobook, and they included both some sermon audio and some lecture audio from Keller.
Oh, interesting.
Like they included in that his sermon after September 11th. Really fascinating.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
That comes up a couple times throughout the book here.
So, yeah, I mean, sin as idolatry. Obviously, a lot of that is drawn from his counterfeit gods book, which I think is probably one of his better known ones. Don't you think?
Yeah, prodigal god, counterfeit gods. Mm-hmm. Yeah, probably those two.
Yeah.
Probably.
I mean, reason for God, but that's maybe a little bit higher brow in terms of like a little bit more intellectual. Mm-hmm. So, but in any case, yeah, I think that, there's a lot of good content in here. It's nice that it really just serves, part of the benefit of this book is it serves as just this isn't like an appetizer essentially of like, hey, if you're interested more in more Keller on this subject,
yeah,
like here's a good summary to orient you. Now go read this book or go listen to these sermons or go read these articles, and that'll get you deeper into what Keller was doing there. So, any final thoughts on this chapter 2 here, sin as idolatry?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, it feels like we've scratched the surface. It is so good, and I really appreciate, like, even talking about where Keller gets some of these ideas, like at the end of, is it 1 John, 2 John? Where,
1 John.
Keep yourself from idols.
Yeah.
That's not mentioned anywhere else in the letter, but
Right.
comes in right at the end, and how Martin Lloyd-Jones did an entire sermon on that, and that really impacted Keller, and it's fun.
But that's part of what I think. I mean, if you think about both Keller and even Piper more on the Edwards thing, but part of their gifts was the ability to popularize, giants of the faith from the past, and basically said, in essence, they did the work for you. Mm-hmm. Like they read Edwards, they read Augustine, and they absorbed it. They reflected on it. It seeped into them, and then they talk about it, and it informs everything they're doing. And so they're able to, in one sense, popularize things that, Augustine. Some stuff in Augustine's not easy to read. Like Confessions is pretty easy. You can hand that to just about anybody.
I've tried to get through City of God like 4 or 5 times, and
but,
I just can't. Yeah.
And even Edwards, Edwards is not easy to read.
It's
Some of his
dense.
stuff is almost impossible to read. Like it takes slow slogging through through the text. So in any case, that's part of the gift that they are to the church.
Oh, yeah.
That they imbibe that, and then are able to simplify and synthesize nuggets of that and provide that to the broader church. So next episode, we will discuss chapters 3 and 4.
And it's religion, right? 3 ways to live.
Yep, and I
it
forget
calls
what the other one is.
And the 4th one is friends.
There you go.
Friendship.
There you go. So yeah, check that out. Be ready for our next episode. But
Dropping Tuesday the
20th.
20th.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And we're both out of town at the same time.
That's right.
Which seems marvelously planned, but was not.
No. No.
Where are you going, and where are you going?
I will be in the thriving metropolis of Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay. I will be in St. Augustine, Florida.
Not St. Augustine.
No, that's a person. St. Augustine's a town.
Okay. All right. All right. Time now for this day in sports history.
All right. This day in sports history, May the 13th.
May's almost halfway over, man.
2025. Yeah, I got an anniversary in 2 days.
That's right.
Yeah, you were there.
I was one of the few.
Yeah. Well, this is 5 years.
Wow.
Isn't that wild?
Well, it was a COVID wedding.
Yeah. So it's been 5 years.
I literally think about your wedding every time I pass that little chapel downtown.
Is that the only time you've been in that building?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
You haven't gone back for nostalgia's sake?
No, we haven't gone back.
Really?
No, we haven't. Maybe with the little one someday we'll go back.
I mean, I guess you guys live in Fort Wayne, so you're not like going down to the village just to walk around.
We don't go. I know there's a pretty thriving farmers market down there. We don't
Yeah.
go to that farmers market. So
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
All right. So May 13th, 2025, 1950. On this day in 1950, first ever race, Formula One World Drivers' Championship, is run at Silverstone, England, and won by Giuseppe Farina of Italy.
I think it's Giuseppe, not
Giuseppe
Yeah, Giuseppe Farina, I think.
in a Alfa Romeo.
Yeah,
Okay,
that's a type of car.
That's a type of car. I assume made in Rome.
Sure.
Okay. First ever Formula One.
1950.
1950. You would think – I'm surprised Formula One was run in England first.
Where would you have expected?
Monaco, Italy.
Yeah.
I don't know. Italian race car driver, though. It's good to know that some things never change.
That's right.
1955, Mickey Mantle hits 3 consecutive home runs of at least 463 feet.
That's a long way.
Those are monster home runs.
Yes. Though –
I wonder what his exit velocity was, or his launch angle.
Yes. Indeed.
Any feelings towards Mickey Mantle?
I have one of his early baseball cards.
Do you?
Yeah.
That's a biography I wouldn't mind reading. I wouldn't mind reading a Mickey Mantle biography someday. 1958, San Francisco Giants teammates Willie Mays and Darrell Spencer each hit 2 home runs, a triple, and combined for 10 RBIs in a 16-9 win over the Dodgers at Los Angeles. In Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm. It's just a very specific,
They each hit 2 homers and a triple.
Baseball is the king of these kinds of things.
Yes.
The whole this is the first player to ever have a triple, strike out twice, walk on an afternoon game in the middle of May after coming back from an ankle sprain. Mm-hmm. Those just sort of bizarre stat combinations that, am I supposed to be impressed by that?
The guy who started doing those stats and is the record keeper of those stats is brilliant. He's created a nice niche for himself.
Oh, yes. Though, now that might be an area where AI takes that.
Takes over.
Because to be able to have access to all of the data, right? All the baseball stats you can imagine, and to be able to say, has a player ever you're in the you're in the 7th inning and a player does something and you're like, has a player ever? I'm sure they have some sort of system already in place where they can search for that, but potentially, AI just spits that right back and goes, oh yeah, Al Janowitz back in 1943 did this. Okay.
Yeah, I do love a good baseball stat that brings in in 1895, we're going back deep,
Yeah.
1981, Oh, boy. I wanted to talk about – let's go back to Willie Mays and Daryl Spencer. Dynamo – I'm going to say the T is silent. Bilsey?
I think it's Tbilisi. I think the T is not silent.
Tbilisi wins 21st European Cup against Carl Zeiss Jena of East Germany 2-1 in Dusseldorf.
Yeah.
Okay. This is a soccer game, I assume.
Yeah.
Excuse me, football. No, we have an American Pope now. This is now soccer.
Yes.
1989, Trinidad and Tobago ties the U.S. 1-1 in the third round of the 1990 World Cup.
I mean, how can you resist a reference to Trinidad and Tobago? Right?
Well, yes. I also want to point out that in 1989 was the third round of the 1990 World Cup.
I just copy and paste.
I assume the championship was in 1990 is what eventually – well, no, that would be it's May. Anyway, we'll move on. 2007, the PGA Players Championship at TPC Sawgrass. American Phil Mickelson wins by 2 strokes ahead of runner-up Sergio Garcia of Spain. Event played in May for the first time.
There you go. Phil.
Lefty.
Is he still like up to his eyeballs in debt, gambling debt?
That's always the rumor, but I've never heard about his kneecaps being broken or anything. You would think even for Phil Mickelson this happens at some point.
I don't know.
That's always the rumor.
I don't know. I mean, yeah. So who do you like out of this?
Oh, boy. I do like Giuseppe. Who do you like?
I mean, I can go with Giuseppe.
First ever Formula One driver. That feels big.
Yeah.
Mickey Mantle hitting 3 home runs. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, massive home runs, but
massive home runs. Still worth one.
Let's do Giuseppe. Giuseppe Farina it is. One thing you liked.
Over the Mother's Day weekend, my brother and sister-in-law came to town, and they brought my niece and nephew with them, and it was lovely chasing her around the backyard for an afternoon.
Yeah.
So she's always very shy with me.
Yeah.
And then realize I like to play.
Yeah.
And so then she sort of warms up.
Yep.
It takes 45 minutes to warm up, and then once you get over that threshold, it's hard to keep her away.
Yeah. Yeah.
My brother told me a great story. So anybody that's showing up to their house is Uncle so-and-so or Aunt so-and-so.
Okay.
And they went and said, hey, Uncle Mike, one of my brother's friends, is coming over to watch hockey. And she's all excited. And then he gets there. She bursts into tears because she thought it was me who was coming over to play with her.
Well, that should warm your heart.
That does. It does warm my heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm also going to go with the Mother's Day festivities, but with a twist. So it's fun to celebrate Kate. Jake came over, but we also had some, not unexpected, but some guests that you probably wouldn't expect to be at our home for Mother's Day. Jenna and Aaron from North Manchester.
Oh, really?
Yes, because we were having an issue with our dishwasher, and because Aaron has some plumbing skills.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Interesting.
He managed to dislodge the blockage and save our dishwasher.
Nice. Probably saved you $150.
Well, we were to the point where if he couldn't fix it, we were just going to buy a new one because this one we've had for a little while, and it's like
saved you a few $100.
Why am I paying $150 or $200 for somebody to come out, and then this dishwasher's going to die on me anyway in like a year? Anyway, so saved our dishwasher. So grateful for his plumbing expertise to help us get that fixed. So that is my one thing I liked. All right, John, we have talked some NBA playoffs. We have talked Tim Keller on the Christian life. Don't forget to read chapters 3 and 4 for next episode. We have talked about Giuseppe Farina. We have talked about John getting to spend time with his family, in particular his niece. And we talked about my Mother's Day festivities. And so I think, by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.